Welcome back to the Puppet Master series with Puppet Master 5, The Final Chapter. And with 6 more movies after this and a reboot on the way, that title just gets more and more laughable. And like I said at the end of the last review, Puppet Master 5 was supposed to be the second half of Puppet Master 4. So perhaps that means this one's going to have a lot more going on. Although it's probably going to be just as dull because there was nothing going for it in the first place. Let's see what they got. And kind of like Puppet Master 2, this film picks up almost immediately after 4, with Rick at the local police station being questioned by a detective, and he's shown pictures of the 2 scientists who were killed in the last film, obviously suspecting Rick had something to do with it.
Considering my client has not been charged with anything...
Wait, what? He hasn't been charged? That means the cops just brought him in from wherever he was to question him. And I have to point that out because if that's the case, why the fuck is he dressed like he's on day release from Guantanamo Bay? Or was he just casually wearing his orange boiler suit when the cops brought him in? Bizarre fashion choices aside, the cops show footage of one of the scientists being killed and put 2 and 2 together of something small being the cause of death, and Blade being found in Rick's possession means they arrest Rick for murder. Now, you should see the biggest flaw with this kind of plot, because if you start investigating the murders that involve puppets and the Bodega Bay, you bring up the question of why hasn't the previous incidents been investigated? And if they have, you would think that murders and suicides that involve puppets and psychics would be at least worth mentioning in a murder case that involves puppets. So again, we're left in this weird limbo of not really knowing what's canon anymore. We then get a recap of the previous movie, which, considering the interrogation scene was a recap anyway, this is here to extend the runtime than actually give useful information. However, there's an interesting addition which needs mentioning.
We unleashed creatures from the underworld that were after the same secret we were.
That's a bit odd. I'm gonna assume it's a mistake on Rick's part, because why would Sutek be after his own magic? So they pretty much recap the entire movie, taking up quite a significant 5.5 minutes as well. Yeah, this film is going to have the same padding issues from the looks of it. Back at the station, clearly they needed to bring in Charles Bronson in order to get Blade into the evidence room safely. Maybe they can bond over their occasional anti-hero status. But quite honestly, the stuff of Blade in the evidence room is completely superfluous, because he just breaks out moments later with zero bearing on the plot. And to make the Gitmo get-up even more ridiculous, merely a few hours in police custody and Rick's released on bail. So why the hell is he wearing that thing, for God's sake? Anyway, Susie is still in the film as she and Rick talk on the phone. Rick tells her that he was bailed out by his employers, and later a Dr. Jennings chats with him in an interrogation room, trying to get Rick's side of the story, but not really believing it. Susie soon arrives to take Rick home, and there's an attempt at a sex scene, which doesn't get very far as Rick just falls asleep. That would be a rare moment of the franchise having the opportunity to show some tits and not doing it. Oh, and that's pretty much the end of any kind of police investigation too. Yeah, the film might be the first to actually investigate the deaths, but it's just an excuse to drive later plot moments at best, and at worst, it's just surface level padding. We return to Sutek's lair, cause God, we missed him and his janky movements that look like he's being operated by 2 puppeteers who hate each other. And he confirms my suspicions of something.
His secret will be revealed to me.
His secret? What are you talking about, you malnourished parade balloon? Last we heard, it was your secret you were trying to stop getting out. Now it's not your secret? What's the truth here? Or maybe it's the fact that the filmmakers were unable to keep track of their incredibly tiny plot between films. Technically, within the same film. No wonder the series canon is so nebulous and ill-defined. Sutek's plan is to send in another of his totem creatures, because when 4 doesn't work, sending just one has to be the winning strategy. But of course, This one is supposedly much more powerful. We've got a while to wait though, since it'll take half the movie to bring the thing to life. At the biotech building, Jennings has a hush-hush meeting with some other colleagues to persuade him to get the artificial intelligence project back up and running, as he makes plans to do just that. And then to up the what the fuck factor, we move to a literal bloodbath, as Lauren is getting an incredibly aggressive head massage from Tunneler. But don't worry, it's all a nightmare that Rick wakes up from. Honestly, I'm not too sure why Rick would have that dream, because he's never seen the puppets act like that. They've been friends and allies, so it doesn't really make much sense. Lauren, as we'll find out, is in a coma, so the damage to the head bit makes sense. But why not have the totems doing it? Or Sutek? Or anything like that? Because the way they did it there is more like how they did the dream sequences in the first film. But the puppets were the bad guys then. So I guess the main takeaway is that the filmmakers still don't know what tone they want. Blade soon appears to startle Rick. Not even Bronson could stop him. And he and Rick are returning to the Bodega Bay to get the other puppets to protect them. One would imagine they could look after themselves at this point, but I guess it's not just Sutek after them now. And yeah, like I said, Susie visits Lauren in the hospital, so we know she's in a coma. Back at the hotel, Jennings has gathered a few cronies / cannon fodder in order to round up the puppets. Which is a bit strange really, because if he does believe the puppets are the be-all and end-all to the project, then he must believe Rick's story. However, he clearly can't believe Rick's story because he doesn't seem to see the situation as dangerous, so the puppets should be useless to him. So which is it exactly? Meanwhile, Sutek is still doing his thing, which I can tell you is nowhere near done yet. He just drips some blood into the thing while talking about his power. We'll be back later to see how he's coming along. Jennings and his crew break into the Bodega Bay and start searching for the puppets, only finding Rick's robots. And to assist the kill count, they all helpfully split up, which will have the desired effect. We then get some more from Sutek, and honestly, they could have just shown his entire life-giving process at the start, and then it would have given more impact when we actually see the totem show up and start killing people. Instead, we keep going back to him doing bugger all until you're just left thinking, get on with it for God's sake. And while in her coma, Lauren has a vision of Sutek doing his thing with the totem, having a seizure because of it. But we're told what we already know, and no one else finds out about it, so what's the point? Especially because her visions are never really addressed, and the coma thing is resolved elsewhere. Rick soon arrives at the Bodega Bay with Blade, not really noticing the broken window or disturbed police tape. He gets Blade to find the others, and back with Sutek, he's finally ready to release the totem, although sometimes I have difficulty understanding him.
To accept the ultimate evil from our Lord.
Arnold? Who's Arnold?
No, our Lord.
See, I'm not the only one. Eventually, after a big old fancy light show, which isn't really that fancy, the totem is now alive and set free on the unsuspecting mortals. And hey, at least this totem looks different to the ones in the previous film, so that's something, I guess. It still doesn't have any kind of personality to speak of, but at least it's a little bit more unique. And while Rick searches his room for the puppets, he finds his computer is acting a bit weird, specifically saying "help me" over and over, which, similar to the previous film, doesn't freak Rick out at all. Either he really is completely unflappable, or just a clueless dullard. Eventually, one of the cronies finds the glowy pyramid thing from the previous film, and while searching through Toulon's trunk, he's attacked and killed by the Uber Totem, which does its own glowy thing, drawing some kind of energy from the guy. But I still have no idea what that is. And you know what I'm gonna say. The black guy died first. And that's not me saying the film is racist or anything like that. It's just significant to note because it's such a well-known horror movie trope. Back with Rick, the computer now tells him life force, because for some reason, a consciousness inhabiting a computer has a very strict character limit and can't be specific. Elsewhere, one of the cronies has found Pinhead, who punches him in the face and runs off. The guy finds Pinhead in the kitchen, but while he's distracted, Jester appears to tenderize his bollocks a bit, knocking him out. Now, if this was the first two films, they also would kill him, but they simply shove him in a cupboard instead, which kind of typifies a significant shift in the characters of the puppets. The totem is found again by another crony who arguably has one of the shittest death scenes, because first, he just falls over for no reason. Secondly, the budget couldn't extend to getting the totem to move, so it just runs in silhouette. And then the guy dies by having the thing limply clamped to his face and rolls around with it a bit. It's hardly a spectacular death. But hey, at least they upped the gore factor since the last film. Susie soon enters the arena. Unlike Rick, she finds and uses the broken window to get in. Even though Rick opened the front door, but whatever. Upstairs, Jennings finds the dead guy, possibly understanding the severity of the situation now. But at the same time, Rick finds more puppets.
Where's Pinhead and Jester?
Where's Pinhead and Jester? Don't you mean, where the hell did that puppet come from? How the fuck did Torch get here? And as he's a product of Puppet Master 2, that means the canon of everything loses any kind of cohesion. And if they were gonna use Torch, why wasn't he in the last film? Jennings runs into the totem as well, but it doesn't manage to kill him as he runs off, while Torch fires his flamethrower, which doesn't do anything, since Torch is quickly taken out by the totem. So that's one way to deal with dodgy canon. Fortunately, Six Shooter is far more successful, wounding the totem, getting it to run off as well. And at the same time, Jennings and Rick finally meet up and join forces.
Where's Susie?
How does Rick even know she's in the building? Because he only just meets her moments later in his room. But anyway, the computer then starts spouting some equations and telling Rick to kill the beast. And then it's revealed that the thing inside the computer is Lauren. Yeah, she's in a coma receiving visions and things, but she's also in a computer helping Rick out. But don't worry, Lauren gives them the answer, that they must activate the Capitron. Wait, didn't they do that in the last movie? What, didn't it take or something? And again, 4 and 5 are supposed to be the same movie, so did they just copy and paste the ending by mistake? But hey, finally, Jennings is here to help out now. Just ignore the fact that he's pretty much done nothing the entire film. Jester knows what to do though, as he shows them where they hid the Capitron. Why they felt the need to hide him is another question entirely. Seems like a bad idea to deactivate something that was such a pain in the arse to activate in the first place. Meanwhile, Pinhead is tracking down the totem. However, this one has a trick up its sleeve, as it can move through walls and doors and generally become incorporeal, which might prove tricky. While Rick and the others work to activate the Capitron, again, I still don't understand why they need to do this again, the totem jumps through the door for a fight with Pinhead. Blade tries to help, but as you can see, it's slightly more difficult to kill. Which again is certainly nice to see these things do something different, but that's really it. Everything else about this totem, apart from its appearance, is pretty much identical to the last 4 totems. So it's all so dull and repetitive once again. At least that's something consistent. Eventually, after a lot of pointless faffing about, they activate the Capitron again. Let's hope he doesn't run out of batteries this time. And Guy Rolfe appears once more to explain everything what needs to be done. If only he'd shown up sooner. He tells everyone that he and the puppets will take care of Sutek and the totem, and Jennings is insistent on wanting to take a puppet, but reluctantly leaves empty-handed for now. However, after riding the elevator down, Jennings attacks. Rick pushes Susie out of the way, but rides the lift back up with Jennings. He knocks Rick out and finds the puppets waiting for him. And with Pinhead opening the lift door, they all kill Jennings pretty quickly, with all the puppets delivering the killing blow, proving they still have that tiny morsel of anti-hero edge. Rick and Susie try to get out of there, and the puppets prepare for a fight, with the Capitron sporting another new head. Oh. That looks ridiculously stupid. Who came up with the design of that one? At least the other head had inspirations from Toulon's experiences, like the World War II style guns on the sides. It looked like it was part of this world. But that one, I don't even know how they came up with that. It's like the props department suddenly thought they were making something out of Buck Rogers. It's just so random and out of place. But anyway, the Capitron uses his new head, fortunately briefly might I add, to find the totem, knowing it's after Rick sending the puppets, as downstairs it attacks. Well, again, I say attacks, but it just stands there, as the Capitron appears with the much better head to fight it. Decapitron and Sutek have a battle of wills almost, with Six Shooter doing some damage. However, Blade is once again bitch-slapped, and the totem tries to zap him, but it doesn't work because, arbitrarily, his powers are spent. So he somehow summons the energy to open up a portal. But regardless, Decapitron just zaps the portal, and that somehow saves the day. Lauren wakes up, but the puppets lay in ruins, as Rick steps on the totem, killing it for good. Which would honestly be an okay way of ending the franchise, especially considering it's called the final chapter, with the puppets sacrificing themselves to stop Sutek. I mean, okay, it's not great, but you gotta take what you've been given with this series. But no, Rick just polishes them all up and they live with him and Susie in their California apartment. Well, until one of the next films destroys this canon as well. So yeah, the final chapter is not even goddamn close for this franchise. This rabbit hole goes so much deeper and so much darker. Puppet Master 5 is just Puppet Master 4 again, with pretty much the exact same issues. However, they're made worse by not keeping track of their own story, and muddying this already fetid swamp of canon. Oh, and even less of Guy Rolfe, who's arguably one of the best actors in this movie. And despite the small amount he's giving, still gives the character the same enthusiasm. It's also pretty obvious that Puppet Master 4 and 5 would work so much better as one film. Remove some of the pointless plot elements, trim down all that padding, and it would have been far more cohesive as a result. And if there's a fan edit out there, I want to see it. I know some people will question why I keep doing these films if I hate them, but the truth is, I don't hate the concept. And I can seriously see what these films can be, especially with a gem like Puppet Master 3 in this series. So, I still want to explore everything the series has to offer. And who knows, one day we might get another gem. Although I'm not holding out much hope on that one. Hello everybody. Thank you once again for watching. If you enjoyed this video, there are links to my previous 2 reviews on screen right now. And if you want to be extra supportive of the channel, you can follow the link in the middle to my Patreon page. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.